Hi, I'm Lynne Bader here from WNED-TV. We are glad that you joined us right now. We are live. I'm here with Kevin Leary, host of a new show that we've been working on called Reimagining a Buffalo Landmark. Enter Corey Fabian-Barrett. So we are here at the Richardson Olmsted Campus. It's this gorgeous place. We're going to take a tour. I'm going to let the two of them take it over. But we wanted to let you know before we started that if you have questions along the way, comments about the campus, anything that you want to ask, just go ahead and post that in the comments. I'll be keeping track and I'll get questions to these guys, okay? We have a show, Reimagining a Buffalo Landmark. It airs this Friday at 9 o'clock on WNED-TV, right? I know.
Yeah,
it's
good
been
stuff.
long. I know, it's been exciting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, look, and the sun is coming out.
Huh.
Yay.
That's a good omen.
That's very good.
The sun is coming out. All right, I'm going to let you two take over,
Great.
okay?
Sounds good.
But enjoy the tour, you guys.
Yeah.
In a bit.
So here we are. We're out on the north side of the Richardson Olmsted Campus.
We are.
And now all of this stuff north of us right now is Buff State. But
Today, yeah. So Richardson Olmsted Campus today is 42 acres of land, 13 historic buildings, all of which are National Historic Landmarks. But originally, as you point out, to the north of us, there were 200 acres of land, and 100 acres that is now Buffalo State College was actually originally part of the hospital here.
Sure. And
all
now,
farm.
when they were bringing in all the stones here, one of the things I learned during film, and I learned so much during the filming of this, which was fantastic, they actually used to bring this stuff up the Ecological Creek, right? And
They
then
did.
wheel them in. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. All of the Medina sandstone here on site, and you can see it in the gigantic buildings all around us, was mined in Medina, New York. That's why it's called Medina sandstone. They brought it up from the Erie Canal to Ecological Creek, and we had a dock here at the hospital, and they brought it right across that 100 acres of farmland to build the hospital here.
Well, that's fantastic.
Not easy.
Yeah, not easy at all. Like horses and carts and hopefully things
best
like
case
that, right?
scenario,
Best
yeah.
case scenario. So we've got a whole bunch, as we look at the building here, there's so much to look at. And for me, the thing that always jumps out are these two towers. But you're telling me, is there anything in those towers?
No, that is such a great question. We get this all the time. There is actually nothing up in the towers. They are purely decorative. If you went inside there, I like to compare it to the inside of a ship. There's a number of platforms and ladders that go all the way up so you can maintain the roofs, but otherwise there's nothing in there, and they were designed just to be pretty. They were never designed to be used.
And they are pretty, aren't they?
And they are.
Oh my goodness.
It's successful.
And so another thing, obviously we see a difference here, right? Because we've got the contemporary glass here, which is just so fantastic and striking against this beautiful old facade. Tell me, how did you get to put in the glass here?
Yeah, well, originally what would have been standing behind us was a brick box addition, basically. Very ugly. It was built in the 1920s. They just kind of slapped it on the back. It wasn't part of the original hospital design. When we came along wanting to reuse these spaces, we thought that this was a great opportunity to put something a little bit nicer on here that could show off the original exterior, which is the sandstone inside of what's now the glass entry.
Sure.
And also add something a little bit contemporary and new to the site.
Sure.
This is a great example of our public meeting process.
Yes.
We've had 12 public meetings to date, and our 13th public meeting is actually tomorrow, 6:30.
Don't miss it. Public
Here.
meeting right here. Help design this place. Anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the things we came to the public, we said we want to put something on the north side of the building.
Sure.
We had a few design options, and the public, as always, super opinionated. It was so fabulous. The original design that we had here was a lot less glass and a little more metal. And when we looked at it, we thought it looked cool, but from an outside perspective, you can get too close to something and not notice that it looks exactly like a cage.
We don't want that.
We don't want that,
no.
yeah. So the public weighed in, and we got this design, which has a lot more glass. It's a lot airier.
It's beautiful.
And it's our beautiful glass north entry now.
Can we go inside?
Absolutely.
Let's head
do it.
there. Yeah.
Can we get to come inside too?
Come on.
Everyone gets to come inside. Yeah. So as we pass here, we've got these three rings.
Yes.
And now there's some significance to these three rings.
There are. This is a beautiful sculpture designed by artist Daniel Schaefer.
Okay.
It's called The Spirit of Community, and the
Okay.
Buffalo Renaissance Foundation brought it here to us.
Okay.
The three rings represent the past, present, and future of this amazing campus.
I mean, as so much of Buffalo as well, right?
Exactly.
It's really just great.
No, the Renaissance Foundation has a series of these sculptures throughout Buffalo. We were really lucky to get one.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I mean, you guys are a landmark.
We
Like
are
a
national
significant landmark here. So let's
Yeah.
go on inside. I'll let you all go in.
Thank you.
We just had somebody say that they hoped we could see the inside of the hotel.
Well,
Oh.
here we go.
So I'll go in next, I guess,
Yeah.
right? So now we're standing inside that glass structure that was outside. And We notice the walls here. This is all original sandstone, right?
Yeah, why don't we actually go right up close to it?
Fantastic.
So we like to point this out, like I said outside, this whole area was originally enclosed in a brick box from the 1920s, which is ugly for everyone to look at, but it actually turned out to be really great because it preserved the sandstone and this original red mortar beautifully.
Just so nice.
So if you walked around the outside, and we'll see it a little bit later, you'll see that there isn't any bright red like this, like you see here.
Yeah.
But this was preserved because it was covered up for 100 years.
Sure.
So when we took it off, this was a really pleasant surprise.
And right before we started, you told me that this mortar here, like the mortar, you can actually tell the different sort of times when it was done because the mortar changes color, the mortar gets different thicknesses and all that.
Absolutely, yeah. You have a good eye.
No, I don't know about that, right? And all of this stuff. Now, this stone, where was this cut?
Sandstone that we were talking about.
And where was it cut?
Right up in Medina, New York.
Fantastic.
It's a really fancy building material that happens to be our local stone.
It's just...
So this stuff is used on Buckingham Palace, it is used on the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's used at the Richardson Olmsted Campus.
Well, it's a nice collection of buildings to be a part of, isn't it? Yeah. So wonderful. So now, Architecture Center.
Yeah, so we can go a little bit further inside.
Sure.
I'm going to pop in here and let you guys know you can make comments, you can ask questions. We're going to answer questions if you have them as we go along. Just give us a second and we'll get to them. Yes. Oh, we're going into a dark space.
We're going in, but it's motion sensor.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll make a lot of motion. He says hopefully.
This is sensor over here.
Okay, well there you go.
So this is one of my favorite spaces.
Sure.
You mentioned that eventually it's going to become the Lipsy Architecture Center, Buffalo. They're coming soon. They're not open yet. So we have this really cool room now, and it has these really neat details.
Yes.
One of the amazing things about the rehabilitation project here is how much oldness is kept alongside the more contemporary feel. And this wall is just a perfect example of that.
Absolutely perfect.
So right now we're in the lower level, what's going to be the center. And parts of these buildings are Hotel Henry, but originally it would have been a basement. So they had a kitchen down here, and now we have a kitchen again. Yeah. For the Hotel Henry restaurant, 100 acres.
One thing I wanted to add, remember, well, when we were producing the program in here in this space, I don't know if you can tell or can hear, it's incredibly echoey.
Yes, yes.
Right? So it was difficult. And that's something that was kind of tough throughout the whole production process.
Yeah.
It was either cold or windy, right? Or they were cutting the grass. We'll see a little bit of that later. Or, but in the television program, all the folks that were interviewed for the program, we wanted to make sure that they were done right here on set.
Yes.
On the set, right, of the Richardson Olmsted Campus. This is a great space that's ultimately going to become a place for everyone to be able to come and enjoy.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Right, I'm going to let you guys take it over.
Sure.
So the Lipsy Architecture Center Buffalo, Lynne reminds me, it's a brand new organization.
Yep.
It's going to be this kind of center. Buffalo is absolutely unique and incredible in that it has the most good examples of architecture, the masters from American architecture.
Sure.
We have Louis Sullivan, we have Frank Lloyd Wright, and we have Henry Hobson Richardson. This is the only city outside of Chicago where you can see works by those three masters in one place. But there's nowhere to tell you where to go where they are. So that's what the Architecture Center is going to be. If you come here, if you're interested in architecture, you can come here, get that overview, see what there is to see in Buffalo. Maybe you came here for the Darwin Martin House and Frank Lloyd Wright, but you don't know about the Guarantee Building.
Right.
So it'll give you a few pointers about where to go and what to see. And that's coming soon.
Awesome.
Stay tuned for more news about them.
Now, also in this space, you'll notice as we go through the building, there's a lot of arches, but then there are also some things that are not arches. What's the significance there?
Yeah, that's, you, again, good eye. So Henry Hobson Richardson, the architect here, loved arches. Every kind of arch. I like to encourage people to find the arch anywhere here. There's all different kinds, all different angles. But when we came along for the redevelopment process, we really wanted to make sure that we were differentiating between what was legitimately old and what is new. So anytime you see something that's a right angle that isn't rounded, that's something new, and we're making that purposeful distinction so no one's confusing something old with new.
Sure.
So this gallery has both. On the one side it has this original gorgeous archway, and then on the other end we have a right angle new doorway.
Now, one of my favorite places that I got to see during filming was this little room over here to the right.
Yep.
And
our chair room?
Yes, your chair room. But if we just stop here, right, we probably don't have to go all the way in. But it's these it's this beautiful archway with this wonderful wooden sort of like door remnants, and then it goes straight back. What would something like this be for?
Storage.
Just storage.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. It is amazing when you consider this is the same kind of idea as the towers themselves.
Yeah.
They had these incredible details, these beautiful little touches, but it was all decorative. It was just not necessarily meant to be seen. It's a very Victorian design philosophy.
I love it. Love it. I feel like I missed my architecture design period, but it's fine. It's fine. So let's keep going because I'd love to get outside and love to look at some of this stuff. Yes, indeed, right? So we go this way?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. And again, more arches, more...
One of our cooler doors.
Yeah, definitely one of the cooler doors. That is just fantastic.
And this is also space that will eventually be home to the Lipsy Architecture Center Buffalo when that opens.
Sure.
And they're still figuring out what they want to do with all these spaces, so stay tuned.
And now Mr. Lipsy had a huge hand in all of this, right?
He did, and that's why it's called the Lipsy Architecture
Exactly.
Center.
And we'll talk a little bit more about him a little bit later, right? When we get outside for a very, very important place in this whole thing. Awesome. Okay. Now the hotel is right above us.
It is.
Right now, right? Yeah.
So we actually want to stop here.
Sure.
So I work for the Richardson Olmsted Campus. We're a nonprofit. We own all of the buildings, 42 acres of land here, and we have the most wonderful tenant in Hotel Henry. They're our first tenant. We still have 10 more buildings that need to be rehabilitated, so there's going to be many more tenants coming down the line. But so far, it's been fabulous. Hotel Henry is incredibly creative. You can see the artwork that they display here. They have a permanent collection as well as a rotating collection that updates every quarter. It's amazing to see what they've done with the space. So we're really excited to see who comes here next.
Yeah. And you can see more of the interior in the showing of this film that we're doing here.
You can.
Yes.
And another nice thing, actually, of the many nice things about Hotel Henry, they really encourage exploration. So we're not going to today spend a lot of time going through hotel spaces because we really want you to come down here and see it yourself.
Yes.
I love it when people explore. The front desk is on the second floor here, so you can stop by. If they have time, they'll give you a tour. Or you can just explore yourself. There are a lot of cool spaces here.
Yes. And the restaurant's fantastic as well.
It is so good.
Yes.
Get the burger.
So now we're coming out, and again, as you were saying earlier, Corey, we've got these fantastic arches, and then we have this scalloped edge sort of thing going on above our ceilings. Can you talk about the significance of that? Is there significance to that?
Well, it is more structurally sound than any other thing. And that is one of the benefits of archways, and you can see there are a couple different examples right in the space where we are right now. But the archway above the scalloped ceiling is pretty special. A lot of places you'll see scalloped ceilings. They're not totally uncommon, but what's really cool about ours, and we discovered this during construction, is that if you take the plaster down, if you take the covering down, there's actually rounded brickwork underneath there. A lot of places will just have the plaster as the rounded part, is the scalloping, but here they actually bothered to do the brick that way underneath.
Even more structurally sound, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just extra attention to detail.
And now, why was this included in the original design of the building?
Great question. So we call these our subway tunnels. They're not really tunnels, but they do lead from the north to the south side of the campus. And they're a Frederick Olmsted innovation. Oh, we can have a dog cameo.
Dog cameo.
Hi. Facebook Live.
Gotta let us.
I was hoping that would happen.
We have a question.
Oh, yes.
Do you know when to expect the Architecture Center to be open? I know it's gone through lots of different planning stages at this point. Okay.
Yeah, so the Architecture Center doesn't have an official opening date at this point. They're very coming soon, but they have had a few different iterations like Lynne mentioned, and they're really focusing on doing it right. Buffalo architecture is so special that they don't want to do anything the wrong way. So there's no official opening date. Stay tuned. When we know anything, you'll know something. But it's going to be a pretty special space just based on the conceptual stuff that I've seen.
So you mentioned Olmsted.
Yes.
What was the relationship between Olmsted and Richardson?
Yeah, they were actually BFFs. Frederick Olmsted was about a generation older than H.H. Richardson.
Okay, yeah.
But they were really good friends. They were neighbors on Staten Island. That's how they knew each other. And then they would go on to be lifelong friends. They continued to live together. One of them moved to Boston, and then the other one followed. They stayed neighbors. They went on vacations together with their wives. They worked on projects like this one and others together. And if we go out this way, we can actually experience one of their great collaborations here.
Oh, well, the marriage of the grounds of this property and then the building. Now, there was a lot of thought behind this on not just getting those two things, but then how those two things intersected in so many different places.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Because I found that history absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's one of the great things, I mean, about Olmsted and Richardson is there are so many ways you can actually visibly see their friendship here on
Sure,
site.
sure.
So one great example is this tunnel. It's very windy, so hopefully people can hear us all right. But Richardson was designing this site, is massive wingspan, all these buildings.
Yes.
And Frederick Olmsted came along and rightly pointed out that it would be really hard to get from one side to the other if you didn't have any kind of tunnel.
Right, right.
If you're familiar with Central Park in New York, you'll know Olmsted is really into tunnels and bridges and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So he suggested these, we call them tunnels. They're more of a walkway. But he suggested it. Richardson thought it was a great idea and implemented it.
Yeah, and it is. It really is. And it gives, I think it just gives this depth, this height to all of it. And of course, when I'm standing here, I look at those windows there. It's just so incredible. It's almost mind-boggling. Like just the amount of light that was into this building. And now that was for a reason, though.
Yeah, absolutely. That was another Olmsted thing, actually.
Okay.
If you're familiar with this area, you'll know Forest Avenue runs right over that way.
Yep.
And the building itself is not parallel to Forest Avenue. And that was Olmsted.
Sure.
He said you could actually get more sunlight in these windows behind us if you tilted the building a little bit, so it was line up with the sun and the set.
So we have a question.
Great.
Sure.
We have a question from Timothy. He wants to know, is the complex campus, we call it a campus, currently open to the public right now? I'd love to wander around the grounds this summer.
Please. Oh my
So
God,
the grounds are open all the time.
24/7, yeah.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
But do you want to talk about, your tour season has begun.
It has actually. So tours, we offer tours, historical tours of the Richardson Olmsted Campus. We do, to his point, we do encourage people to walk around.
Yes.
Come explore. We've got 42 acres of green space to see and enjoy. I love that the dog walks through. We almost always have dogs here. But we do also offer historical tours that go inside the abandoned buildings. We still have 10 of those buildings that haven't been rehabbed yet. Tour tickets just went on sale last week, actually. So now's the time to go get them. You can get on our website. It's richardson-olmsted.com.
So let's take a walk to some of these grounds to show this beautiful public green space that we have here. And
It's chilly today. But
it's a little chilly. Well, about the chilly, I don't know if this compares
fair enough.
to
Yes.
some of the days that we were filming on this campus.
All
Let me
right.
tell you.
So we'll talk about that for a minute. We started filming in, I don't know, was it May or June?
People don't realize that it takes a full year to make something like Reimagining a Buffalo landmark.
Right.
You were first here last February or March.
Yes, yes.
And then the filming took a good 6 months.
The filming took
every season
because we had several interviews to do. We wanted to make sure that we got some great footage of the campus.
Yep.
You're going to see in this program on Friday night some amazing drone footage, which I think gives you a view of the campus that we don't normally get to see.
So unique.
But Kevin's right. It's a little windy today. There were days where we were filming
Inside.
we
That
could
day
see
we
our
filmed
breath.
inside. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and
was
we were
rough.
trying to. We had to do retakes because I could see his breath.
Yeah.
It was so very, very cold.
And when we started filming, it was nice and he didn't have a coat on.
Yeah.
So then for the whole shoot, he couldn't wear a coat even though it got
had
down to like 30 degrees.
So yeah, throughout the season, we had to do more shoots, and I had to say, "You weren't wearing your coat in that scene, so you can't wear your coat now." And he'd say, "Are you kidding me?" I'd say, "Nope, take the coat off. You can't wear the coat."
And it's fine.
Yeah.
We all lived.
Ultimately, it was fine. Yeah.
Right. But I think, that's just part of the thing is we really wanted to be able to capture, and we did get some great footage of the campus throughout all of the seasons.
Yeah.
So one of the things that isn't featured in the documentary, but everyone sees if they come onto the grounds, is the beautiful South Lawn.
Yes.
And you've got a couple of trees that have really significance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Want to go over there?
Yes.
Let's.
All right, let's look both ways.
Yeah, right? Yes, be mindful of that because this people
is an
do.
active roadway.
Yeah, people do come.
The building behind us, I do like to point out, is the current Buffalo Psychiatric Center. Is their Strozzi building.
Ah, yes.
People sometimes ask me, "Oh, this used to be a hospital. Like, what happened? What happened to the hospital?" And the Buffalo Psychiatric Center was built in the 60s, and that is where patients moved after they left our historic buildings in 1974.
Sure.
So not as attractive.
The first significant tree is this one with the posts, right?
Yes. This is our iconic tree, I would say.
Yes.
People know the tree with the stilts.
Yeah.
This is it. This is actually a historic oak tree. It predates the hospital. This was here before Richardson Olmsted ever got here. It is over 150 years old. We put the stilts in there when we were under construction for the core project here, just to make sure it was stabilized. We didn't really need it, but we wanted to make sure it didn't get hurt. After construction was completed, we had the tree doctor come out and take a look, and he said it's not really hurting anything. You might as well leave them there just in case.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's going to stay our tree with stilts.
That's
even
fantastic.
When construction's done.
And now there's another one as well, and it's straight on through.
Yeah.
What's the significance of this next one?
This is also a pre-Olmsted tree.
Okay.
And I guess I should say we have plenty of trees that were planted by Richardson Olmsted. We're just not talking about them. So the tree straight on the other side of the south lawn, this is an ash tree, and it is a champion ash tree. We're actually in a bit of a bickering match, I guess, with an ash tree downstate to argue about which is the biggest ash tree in New York State. I'd say it's this one. We're very lucky to still have it. Emerald ash borer has taken out a lot of the ash trees in Buffalo.
Yes.
In particular, all of the ash trees at Buffalo State College,
yes.
which is right next door.
Yes.
So we have this tree inoculated once every 2 years. It actually gets a little shot in the bark to take care of any emerald ash borer that might be there.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Keep it healthy.
It. Yeah.
Keep it healthy.
Absolutely.
So, as we mentioned earlier, this beautiful campus. Now, this didn't, in like what? The 60s, 70s, 80s, somewhere in there, this wasn't green space.
It was not, tragically.
Yeah.
So this was all a part of Richardson Olmsted's original plan for the 200 acres of hospital grounds.
Yep.
But sometime in the mid-20th century, they thought paving paradise and putting up a parking lot would be a good idea. So they built a parking lot right here where we're standing in front of the Towers building. That was one of the first things that the Richardson Olmsted Campus did when we started. Was we really got to take this back to a green space.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
we chewed up that parking lot. We actually used the ground up parking lot to make the walkways.
Fantastic.
It was a very green project.
Very green.
Ways.
Yes.
And now we're happy to report that we have a public green space for our community to use once again.
And this front entrance, I mean, like when you think about the campus, this is it. I mean, it doesn't get better than this.
Absolutely.
This is fantastic.
And this was the historic entrance. If you were coming here to visit a family member, if you were a patient seeking treatment, you would have come right up off of Forest Avenue and come through those doors.
Yeah, and go in those doors and see that beautiful staircase.
Yes.
Yes, watch for footage of that. That staircase is just absolutely gorgeous. Wonderful. So the next hit, I'd like to take us over here because there's a bridge just randomly in the middle, but it's very special, right?
It is. We mentioned Stanford Lipsy inside.
Yes.
Well, briefly when we were talking about the Architecture Center.
Yeah.
Stanford Lipsy is our founder here at the Richardson, and he was the former publisher of the Buffalo News. And before I go into this, if you have any questions about Stan or any topic that we're talking about, or the Richardson in general, you can always type them in. Lynne will get them to us. But Stan was our founder here. He is the namesake of the Architecture Center, and he also was incredibly instrumental in making any of this happen.
Yeah. So let's go take a gander.
Yes.
At this bridge.
Bridges. So when we were redoing the South Lawn, there was one thing he said he wanted, and it was to make sure that there was a bridge. A lot of Olmsted parks have these bridges over various waterways. Ours go over some rain gardens.
So it's also a good time to mention again that the film we're talking about here premieres Friday, 9 p.m. And also don't forget the public meeting about the Richardson Olmsted Campus tomorrow night. What time is it tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night is at 6:30. It's
fantastic.
Actually over at the Bulger Communications Center at Buffalo State College.
Great.
We had a little bit more space for everybody.
Oh, and I also wanted to cut in here just for a minute. We did post your website in the comments, which is great if people have questions or they want to book a tour, right, or figure out about tickets. And then there's also a link, if you notice in the comments, to our WNED site about the program, Reimagining a Buffalo Landmark. because we've got some
is a
bonus
treasure trove.
videos,
Oh.
some great drone footage.
Oh, I got.
some really.
I'll be checking that out.
Some articles that were written, so you can check that out even in advance of the program on Friday.
It's already up.
It's already up.
Yeah.
Not the whole show, but like all the
Right.
extra
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. I know what I'm doing later today. Fantastic. So this is the bridge.
This is the bridge.
Oh, it's yeah.
On either side of the bridge, you'll see that there are these ecological rain gardens.
Ah,
That
yes.
was also part of the South Lawn regreening. These kind of help drain groundwater a little bit better, and it makes this a very ecological landscape, much like the grounding up of the parking lot that we did.
So I've got another question.
Sure.
Great.
And since we're here, we'll go ahead and address it.
Yeah.
Bailey wants to know, were the tower roofs always green, or is that oxidation?
Oh, great question.
Great question.
The tower's roofs, we all know them as green. It is part oxidation, but originally they weren't even copper. The tower's roofs were originally clay tile. They were a diamond shape like this. The whole roof was clay tile. And if you go on the website that Lynne mentioned, WNED.org, our little Reimagining a Buffalo landmark page, you can actually see a picture with a zoomed in version of that original roof, so you can get a feel of what the clay used to look like. It was like an orange clay tile.
Yeah. And
beautiful.
And so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. The roofs here
Yes.
at the Olmsted Campus. Richardson Campus, I'm sorry. We've got asphalt shingle up there now, but originally, what was it?
Would have all been slate. And if you look at the towers, it still is a slate roof up there. We were very lucky to get a grant from the National Park Service called Saving America's Treasures that paid for the slate roof tile in the towers building. Wouldn't pay for all the buildings, but
Hey,
alas.
you get something.
You get something.
You get something. So I'd love to go over here.
All right,
Because
good.
we've got behind this fence, and these are some of the buildings that we're still working on, right?
Yes.
And all that stuff.
There's plenty to do here. We still have 350,000 square feet
Yeah.
left to rehabilitate here. We've only done 150,000, so there's still 10 more buildings to go. And that is what our public meeting is going to be talking
Yes.
about tomorrow night.
Fantastic.
Come in, chime in, hear some ideas that we have. We want to hear from you about your opinions, what you want to see. So come on down to the Bolger Communication Center at 6:30 tomorrow. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. But the difference behind us, we can see where the
It's
fence starts
stark.
over here. That is where the abandonment begins. So we're going to kind of go walk over a little bit closer
Yeah.
to that.
Again, look both ways.
Safety first.
Yes, that's right. So behind the chain link fence, and there's some more chain link fence, it seems like, that's on the side of the building. Now,
Oh, here comes a truck.
those used to be porches, correct?
They did. Make sure.
Yeah, everyone
Banana
gets
safety.
safe.
Yeah. So we're talking about, I think a lot of people refer to these as cages.
Right, and they're not.
They're not cages. What you see on the outside of the building, they're right behind us here. They were originally porches. So what these originally would have had are these canvas awnings. Like, think of a Victorian vacation hotel in the Adirondacks. That's the kind of awning that would have been on these things. They also had a little wooden handrail going along around waist height. At a certain point later on, they put these enclosures around them. And this was for safety purposes. When overcrowding became more of an issue at the hospital, they didn't have enough staff per patients to go around.
Sure.
But they still wanted everyone to receive the benefits of fresh air and sunshine.
Right.
So they put these enclosures on so people could still go outside but wouldn't have to be monitored quite so closely. And today they do look a little bit ominous. They've oxidized, they've rusted a little bit, but they were originally some very nice porches. And if you come on one of our historic tours, you actually get to go on one of those porches, and it's a really different perspective. It's a nice feeling in there.
Yeah.
Well, and I also wanted to point out, which I never would have known before had you not, if you look at this building here,
Right.
and the porches, and then you kind of pan over here, you can see. You want to point them out, the
Yeah.
lesser
Yeah,
spots?
right there, yeah.
I don't know if you can-
So there were porches that were taken down as part of the process.
There were, yeah.
All right, great.
They decided they couldn't be used.
Yeah, exactly.
For the hotel.
So we want to hear your questions. Please just chime in with any comments or questions that you may have as we're moving along. I think we're going to get up close and personal to
Yes.
some Medina sandstone.
Our favorite.
All right, let's go.
Yes. And how, Corey, do we tell the difference between new stuff and old stuff?
Good question. On the outside, it's usually the color is the dead giveaway. So as we're coming in closer to here, there are a bunch of different colors of Medina sandstone that you can get. Ours is this reddish brown, and you'll see behind us, the newer stuff is much brighter red, and the older stuff is much browner. There's a good example. Yeah.
No, yeah.
So anything that needed to be patched as part of the rehabilitation process, that was when we would put in a new piece. Medina, New York's quarries were actually mined out in the late 19th century, so we had to go as far as India and England to get Medina sandstone for the replacement.
Now, we talked about when we were on the north side, they brought this stuff up the creek.
They did.
And they carted it up here, but it was only rough stone when it got to the site.
Yes, absolutely.
So how did we get to these nicely shaped, perfectly square bricks?
They had to do that all on site. It is craftsmanship. Man. So it would just arrive here in rough blocks. A lot of people see the exterior here and it's very rough looking, like to feel. And they just assume that it was cut at Medina in the perfect shape it needed to be and then brought here. That was not the case.
We weren't that advanced technologically,
we
were
were
we?
not.
No.
Timothy says, when can I move in?
Which wing is he talking about?
I don't know. Exactly.
Come on down, Timothy.
And we had somebody recommend the tour. They did it a couple of years ago and had a really great time.
Oh,
yes.
So that's
Thank
super.
you.
One thing I want to point out while we're here, in addition to the stone, is when you talk about the Kirkbride Plan and the design for open, airy, light-filled spaces, if you look at these windows, this is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And you can't see it from here, but the orientation of the buildings to the way the sun rose and set,
Yes.
that was designed purposefully.
Yeah, by
right?
Frederick Law Olmsted.
There you go.
Yep.
See?
Taking advantage of as much sunshine as possible in not super sunny Buffalo, New York.
Exactly. It's like, wait, no, we can't have the buildings this way. We got to
We
have
won't
them.
get any sun.
We
Yeah.
have got to have them this way. Now,
Yeah.
there are buildings that no longer exist, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm actually glad you brought that up. We do have a brand new tour this year that is focused on the lost buildings of the Buffalo State Asylum. These
Okay.
are things that were taken down. This building was in operation as a hospital for 100 years. So they needed buildings, they stopped needing buildings. There was a lot of fluctuation in what was going on here. So some are still standing, some aren't. And that
Right.
was a natural part of the hospital process.
Exactly. And then I think some of the buildings that are closer to the center have this Medina sandstone, but not all of the buildings do.
Yeah.
And as a result, some of those outer buildings were more deteriorated than the ones closer to the center.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Right.
So this was a state project. It was a state hospital. So they were originally using state funding to build this. So inevitably they ran out of money in the middle of the project.
Does that sound familiar?
This was 1870s.
Yeah.
It's still true.
Wow.
So they have this Medina sandstone, which is a really expensive building material. They did the towers building. They did 2 buildings on either side, and then they just ran out of money. They're like, what can we use that kind of looks like sandstone?
Yeah.
Brick.
Yeah.
So the outer 3 buildings were made of brick.
Yeah.
It is a lot less stable in the long term than this huge hulking stone.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh,
Hang on a minute. I
Oh.
can see what that is.
There we go.
Any wing, I'm not picky. No. Timothy really wants to move in. Tim, I hear you.
God
I'm
bless
with you
Timothy.
100%. Yeah, I've got it. So we've got, was any of the original medical equipment left behind when the facility was abandoned? And if so, are there any plans for a museum of sorts to honor what the facility was originally used for?
That's a great question.
Yes, and lovely idea.
Yes.
So yes, when the state moved out and the last patient left in 1974, there was a fair amount of stuff left. Obviously, they took all their records with them and all the confidential material, but if you go in the buildings, there is still some assortment of things. So we have a lot of wheelchairs, some actually old pews from the historic chapel that used to be on site. It was one of the buildings that is
I think
gone.
there are some beds. I know that
Yep,
we went
there's
by
some
some
beds.
beds. So yeah, there are things that are left over.
A whole barbershop is
A
still
whole
here.
barbershop, yeah.
There are still things, you can see them on our tours. One of the things that I hope that the Architecture Center will do in the future is have some kind of gallery or space dedicated to the history of the building.
Right.
Not just as an architectural wonder, but also this more mental health care side of it where we could display those things. So fingers crossed. I love that idea.
Love it.
Good idea. Thank you for the
Yes.
question. And then I think finally, I also wanted to talk about on our website on WNED, there is a lot of information about Richardsonian Romanesque, right? And what
yes.
that looks like not only here, but other places that you can see it in the country and other places you can see it in Buffalo. Either
lot of places.
maybe not by Richardson, but by others who sort of mimicked what Richardson had done. So you want to check that out as well. All right, I'll let you guys continue.
Okay, great. So let's head on back through one of these
good.
subway tunnels
Yeah.
you're talking about and head on back to the north side and we can check out some other spaces.
Yeah. And as we go by, you can see that kind of outline of where the porches used to be on the building. It's that whiter colored stone. Hopefully that's coming through.
I do. Well, now the sun's out.
Now that's a beautiful thing.
And the detailing on all of this is just fantastic. You see the arches over the first floor windows, and you've got the rosettes up there on the front of the buildings. I mean, it's just spectacular.
Yeah, and one of the really tragic things about the project is that architect H.H. Richardson did not live to see all of this completed.
Oh.
It was the largest project of his entire career. It was one of the earliest and the largest. But he died young of kidney disease, and so he never even got to see this whole western wing completed. This was done by other architects afterwards. And if you're a Buffalo architecture buff, you might be familiar with E.B. Green, of Green and Wicks.
Yep.
He actually did a lot of these western buildings here. So
Wonderful.
it's like an architectural bonus.
Definitely. So as you, this is an old building, we know that. That's the whole point, right?
Understatement.
Understatement. But we've got new facilities going on inside. What were some of the challenges of putting all this new stuff in an old space?
A lot. So this is one of the ongoing challenges of this site, particularly about anything you're trying to do here.
Right.
It's a National Historic Landmark.
Yeah.
We happen to have a lot of those in Buffalo, so we feel like that's not super special, but there's only 2,500 of them in the entire country. So it's a very special, important designation. But once you are a National Historic Landmark, and if you're using historic tax credits on your redevelopment like we do, there are limitations on what you can do and what changes you can make.
Sure.
To the exterior and the interior.
Yes.
So Lynne a little while ago mentioned the Kirkbride Plan. That's named after a physician named Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride from the mid-19th century. He developed this plan of hospital. It's very popular all across the country. But the defining characteristic of this hospital were these massive corridors.
Sure.
These are 210 feet long. They're huge. And they're beautiful, and they have a lot of light and sunshine, and they were designed to be calming for patients. But when you're redeveloping, that's challenging.
Yes.
A lot of people see that as wasted space.
Right.
And that's another way that we were really lucky with Hotel Henry, in that they don't see it as wasted space. They just see it as total opportunity.
Sure, sure.
They've done weddings, they do family reunions, they use it for all kind of creative things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's get on through here. Another one of these arches. It's like a broken record.
Can't lose.
can't lose. And
No, we really have to thank Richardson Olmsted for these subway tunnels.
They're fantastic.
Even right now, it's a full mile around the entire campus, all the buildings. If we didn't have these tunnels, you'd have to go a mile around every time you wanted to come
to do anything. Yeah, right. You can't do that. Right.
This tour would be impossible.
Right. Yes. Yes, it would be. So behind us, we've got a building right behind us over here, and then we've got the outline of a building over here. Talk to me about these spaces.
Yeah. I can blow my nose first.
Okay.
It's cold.
It is cold.
So a lot of people wonder about this little foundation that we have over here.
Yes.
And we're going to keep coming closer
Yeah,
to
let's,
that.
yeah.
If you looked at it from above, it is actually a cruciform cross shape. So a lot of people think that this was a chapel or it was used for some religious purpose, and that is about as far from the actual story as you could get. This was originally a greenhouse. So if you've ever visited the botanical gardens down in South Buffalo, they have this beautiful glass and steel structure over a stone foundation.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we would have had here on a really small scale.
I've got a question. Scott would like to know, sad that they knocked down the buildings on the east side.
Yes.
We agree. We completely agree.
Yes.
Do they plan on putting the rest of the buildings to use?
Definitely. So two points there. Sadly, in the 60s, well before our nonprofit came on the scene, they did knock down the three most easterly buildings. This whole site would have stretched all the way to where the Birchfield Penny is today if those were still standing.
That all the way to the Birchfield?
All the way to Elmwood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was huge. And those were lost in the 60s, which is very tragic. Those were the brick buildings that were designed by H.H. Richardson. The ones that are standing were those later architects. So it's a really tragic loss for us here. But in second answer to your question, are we going to use all the other buildings? Absolutely. We are trying our hardest. That is actually what we're going to talk about at the public
I was going to say, come to the public meeting
tomorrow.
tonight. Oh, tomorrow. Kevin, what are you doing?
And even if you don't come to the public meeting, I think that there are lots of ways that you can get involved. You know,
Absolutely.
after watching the program on Friday at 9, Be in touch with the folks at the Richardson, get involved in your own community. We have a preservation group here in town.
Yes.
Preservation is really a big deal right now. And we're seeing that happen. And I think this building is an example that everyone across the country is looking at.
Yes.
In terms of, a model that seems to be working. And with the first phase nearly complete, it is really about, you're checking that off the box. It's about thinking about phase 2 and phase 3 and on and on. These buildings don't get rehabilitated in a couple of years or even a decade.
Absolutely not.
Right.
So our organization started in 2006. We're, like you said, just completing the first phase of rehabilitation. Other things that we did during that time, and you'll see a lot of this in Reimagining a Buffalo Landmark. We stabilized all the buildings to wait until we know what we're going to be doing with them. We did a lot with the landscape, including tearing up that parking lot on the south lawn, and we created these first 3 buildings into Hotel Henry and the Architecture Center.
We have Karen Weber from Florida joining us.
Hey,
says
Karen.
She wishes she lived closer.
Karen is one of our most loyal Facebook followers. Hey, Karen. I wish you could join us too. So let's head over to the greenhouse.
Yeah. So what about the building next to us? We got the greenhouse here.
We do.
And so what's the one behind us then?
The one behind us, this originally would have been the male patient kitchen.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite buildings on site. Even though I work here, I'm actually a miniaturist. I like really small stuff. So this is one of our few small buildings, so I really like it. It is the original male patient kitchen. This is where they would have made all the food for the patients who lived on the eastern side, which were the male patients. You can see it is also made of Medina sandstone, like most of the buildings on the eastern side, and it matches the greenhouse that would have been right next door.
Yeah, and so over here, we've got all these curved walkways, right? We've got this one, we've got that one, we've got that one. Why are they curved?
That's a great question. This is a historical deep dive. So when this was being built, the next closest asylum prior to this one was in Utica, New York. And for those of you familiar with New York State, that's pretty much the middle of the state. It's pretty far from Western New York. The Utica Asylum was run by a man named Dr. Gray. So once the Buffalo Asylum was up and running, they invited Gray out here to advise, to see what he had learned in his time in Utica, to see if he could make some improvements before they started building something here. And these curved connectors were a Dr. Gray. So he had, at his hospital, they had all right angle connecting corridors between buildings. He found once overcrowding became an issue, it's very tempting to start putting beds in places where there are right angles, because beds are rectangles.
Right, sure.
He's like, if you put in some curved corridors in that hospital, that'll eliminate that temptation. You won't be stuffing people in where they shouldn't be.
Right. And there's a scene in the film where we actually go into the curved corridors when you come out from Hotel Henry into the curved corridors. And a docent by the name of Tom Johnston, great job. Hi, Tom, if you're watching. He gave us a great tour.
Oh, great tour.
And
just great.
There's some really neat spots within those curved connectors where they uncovered some original stenciling. And instead of painting over it, they sort of framed it, so it almost looks like artwork. So it's interesting, within the building, you can see several spots where they're hanging on to the history, and they're honoring the history throughout the building.
Absolutely. That was so important to us during the rehabilitation process. Yeah. This is, we like to say, that difference between rehabilitation and restoration.
Oh, good point.
So a restoration is something like the Darwin Martin House, where you're going back to a very specific moment in time. That's not what we're doing here. We're rehabilitating. We're finding new uses for something. But that doesn't mean we don't love our history. So we've been trying to keep as much historical detail as possible. And one of my favorite things to do inside Hotel Henry and the Architecture Center is walk around and find those pieces of history. You lived in the grand staircase.
Yes.
That's a great example.
Oh, my goodness.
It's beautiful. It has a little wooden bird carved in the side of it. We like to think that it represents the phoenix rising from the ashes that we have here. But it also would have been a nice metaphor for patients at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to go inside now.
We are.
Right? Because, well, that's where we're getting to.
I mean, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So again, all this light. Now, oh, yes, one of my, yes. Okay. So we've got the buildings, and we've got all of them stacked up, and there's that one long corridor that we were talking about.
Yes.
But then there's another corridor. It's like a T, and it makes a T.
It is.
And there's significance behind that.
Yeah, we called that the T. That is also another innovation here that we have to thank Dr. Gray for. This was another way where usually if you were at a Kirkbride Plan hospital, you would have those super long corridors, but it would just be that. There wouldn't be anything further coming off of it.
Sure.
We have these T's, like the space behind us, to add a few more spaces, a few more rooms.
Yeah.
So you can accommodate more patients and help more people.
And a little more light, too.
Even more light.
Even more light. So, basement.
Yes.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Because this goes into one of the, just the other side of the Hotel Henry, right?
Well, this is
or is this
another
abandoned?
boundary.
Oh, this is a boundary.
This to our right, your left, right here. This is starting to go off in the eastern wing of buildings that still have to be rehabilitated.
Okay.
You can tell there's all the dead vines growing on there.
Dead giveaway, I guess.
Definitely not right now. But right here to our left and your right, this has already been reused. You can see that the stone is a little bit cleaner. All of the windows have been restored.
Yes.
We did actually send out every single window here. We took it, sent it to Kansas City to be restored to the best window restorer in the country, and then they sent it back to be reinstalled. It's that kind of level of detail that we had as part of the rehabilitation process.
It's the commitment. It's the commitment.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. Let's go on inside.
Yeah.
These downspouts. Fantastic. Okay.
All right, into the basement. It's much warmer.
Yeah, it's much warmer here.
Fortunately.
After you. Okay. After you.
So I like bringing people down here because this is another amazing example of archways.
Yes.
Apparently cannot talk about archways enough on this program, but if you stand at the end here and then look straight down, archways upon archways upon archways. And these are stable factors, but also that Richardsonian Romanesque that Lynne mentioned outside. Arches are a big part of that. And inside also, it's great if you look right here at this column. This is how thick the walls are. So when we talked back at the beginning about archways versus right-angled doorway entries, we have both here, where this is the original archway, but then this is a new opening that we put in as part of rehabilitation. And this shows how thick the walls are here. This place is incredibly stable.
And you've got all the new stuff, of course, up here in the ceilings. And that's part of the reason why you have to cut some of the stuff away, right? To make sure that all the amenities are what you need for a hotel or something like that.
Absolutely.
And now these are scalloped ceilings here as well, correct?
It's a little bit hard to see with the new HVAC stuff.
Yes.
But there is a scalloped ceiling up here. And the other thing I like to point
right
out,
here is the brick that you were talking about earlier, right?
Yes. Yes. I don't know if you can see that with the glare from the lamp, but
can you have it? Can you see it there, Johnny? He's having trouble. Hang on a minute.
Johnny's our great camera guy here.
There we go.
So important.
Yeah.
The other part I like to show, if you can pan down to my feet here, you'll see there's a different colored concrete on the floor in the middle. It's like a little narrow patch. Fun fact about these basements is that a miniature railroad used to run through the basement of all of these buildings. And this was the railroad track originally. The railroad was not here for fun.
No.
It was here to run food from the kitchen that we just went to outside down every single building to get it up so it was still hot by the time it got to patients. And the best way to do that, they apparently thought, was miniature railroad.
Because you only have one kitchen for each side. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we keep going down and we can see the features, because this is the hallway you're talking about. This would be replicated on every single floor, basically, like this sort of thing, all the way straight down.
This is the 210-foot long corridor we've been talking about.
Yeah.
This is actually divided in half widthwise, so a whole other half again that way would be what you see upstairs when you come explore Hotel Henry, which I hope you'll do.
Yes, indeed. And this is the T. We're coming up on the T.
We are. We're going to go down the T.
Look
at a pretty special piece of art.
Oh, that's right. And your offices?
Near our offices, yeah.
Near our offices.
Do you ever...
we're losing him. We're losing him. Hi, guys.
We're too excited about the art.
Right here, Corey.
Yes.
So we had a comment earlier.
Yeah.
Are there audio tours available?
Well, yes, there are.
Yes, there are. Now, this doesn't.
This is an old sign. This is not a new sign.
That's why it's down here. But we offer the guided historical tours where you can get tickets on our website, and the URL is in the comments. But if you can't make it on a tour, we do also have this free audio tour. And the phone number here is still accurate.
Oh, wonderful.
Just call
hone in there.
Number. You can call it from any phone. You don't need to download an app. You could even do this from your living room. And you can hear a little bit about the history of the site and get a little teaser if you want to see a little more about the history, know if you want to come before.
Or if you're in Florida and you can't come, let's call the audio tour, right? Yeah. There you go. Okay, through the door lies an absolutely fantastic painting.
Yes.
Oh.
So this is pretty special. This was painted by Hubert Crawford. He was a patient here in the 1960s, and he painted this remarkable piece of work. And when we look at this today, we're used to seeing the drone photography that Lynne mentioned, but they didn't have drones back then. He wasn't ever up in a helicopter. He was envisioning this perspective from his room, and he painted this incredible view of the campus.
And on it, you can see the different periods of time, right? Because we've got the original building here, obviously, and then we've got the new building here, and then we've got, now what about like nursing school number 15? Is this Buff State?
That is still standing. It's still owned by the Office of Mental Health, actually.
Fantastic.
But this is done in 1969, so it's after those buildings that would have gone to the east were demolished,
correct,
like our viewer mentioned. So they're already gone to build the Butler Rehabilitation Center, which is right next door. This large building here was the medical surgical building. It was also built in the 20th century. It is now gone. They tore it down in the 90s.
Right.
So this is really a snapshot in time. I also like to point out over here that when we were on the South Lawn, we mentioned that they built a parking lot. And there it is, hiding in between the trees here, that we took out to make the South Lawn landscape.
This is great. Now, he did another picture as well.
He did. You want to take a look?
So Timothy says, now that deserves to be a print, a poster, or a postcard.
Totally.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's gorgeous. We were incredibly lucky. The Buffalo Psychiatric Center's public affairs officer donated this back to us last year, and we've been enjoying it ever since. And to that point, someone made a point about maybe having a museum one day. That is just the kind of thing that I would hope we would be able to display. So this is another work by Hubert Crawford, who was a patient here, and it says, thrice daily body nourishment administering. So this was getting fed meals here at the hospital with professional nurses.
Wow.
That's great.
One of the special things that people don't really know about this site is that we were one of the first nurse training programs for psychiatric hospitals in the country.
Okay.
So we're pretty proud of that history, and this is a nice little illustration of all that they did here.
This is just great.
Yeah.
This is absolutely great. You want to head back outside? You want to go back inside? What do you want to do?
We can head outside?
Sure.
Great, let's do it.
The sun seems to be out.
Yeah.
Makes it a little warmer.
So if you have any more questions, you can send them our way, type them in. We are on call and ready to answer them. We're coming back around to where we started the tour.
Yes.
Were there any topics?
I do have a comment from Mark Saglin, who actually, we know Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark.
He's in the program. Hi, Mark.
He's one of our amazing volunteer docents here. If you come on a tour with us, every single one is manned by the most incredible volunteers I've ever worked with, certainly. So Mark is one of them.
He says Mr. Crawford was the most renowned African American artist in Buffalo history, and he also did a mural at Fort Niagara.
Really?
So yeah, very cool.
Thanks, Mark.
I know. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
That's fantastic. And so over here, the red building, brick, is what's...
That was also a kitchen. So
okay.
One of the things we didn't really talk about today is the Kirkbride Plan in much detail.
Right.
But it did separate patients on the east and west side of the campus.
Okay.
So the eastern side of the campus would have been for male patients, which is why you have the male patient kitchen that we walked by earlier.
Yep.
The western side would have been for female patients, and so that wonderful building behind us was the original female patient kitchen.
Sure.
It is made of brick because it is after that point where they had run out of money for the sandstone, and that is designed by E.B. Green of Green & Wicks.
Okay.
If you are architectural enthusiasts.
And this sort of brings us back to where we started.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's it is a wonderful place to be. You can feel a sense of history when you're here. The television program is 30 minutes long. We do go into some of the abandoned buildings, right?
Yep.
And we get a chance to see what 40 years of neglect does look like.
Yeah.
And the work that was done to kind of rehabilitate it back to not its grandeur, but to find a reuse for it. And I think that's the thing, is that for so many years, this building, people had lots of ideas about what to do with it.
Yep.
but it was about the resources that were available to do that. And I think that we're just proud at WNED to be able to share the story. It was great working with you guys
did
at
an
the
incredible
Richardson.
job.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
And so you want to tune in this Friday night at 9 o'clock on WNED-TV. You don't want to miss it. Again, that's Reimagining a Buffalo Landmark. So for now, we'll bid you adieu. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for watching.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.